East, and of course it makes that very special combination of Germany, which will produce 2 world wars, which, unhappily. And there are whole books written on this. And that state, though, gets off to a very strong start under this guy Bismarck. We'll talk more about state planning, but he gets the government involved in promoting industry, partly for the military. And by the same year that he unifies Germany, they also conquer France. And boy, does that turn the power structure around. You have to remember, Napoleon just ran roughshod over Prussia, Austria, all the way out until he bogged down in Russia. And suddenly, within less than a century, 3/4 century, Germany just bulldozes France, and we'll do that 2 more times in the 20th century. That's because of German industry. Now, of course, it's not so much fun. It's the way we learn about it with board games and History Channel specials, that it's all about great generals and so on. Yeah, great generals matter, but in the end, it's who's got the firepower. Okay, so we get heavy industrialization of Germany, the ability to produce steel and vehicles and railroads and whatnot, and also Germany becomes the leader in chemistry, of dyes and so on, and generally the development of modern science. Germany leaps to the head. It's the Germans who invent aspirin. It's the Germans who produce all those great physicists who end up running off to the United States and Britain and so on before World War II. And by 1890s, 1900, it's caught up with Britain in output. And the data isn't good enough that we can say exactly when that was, but it's around 1890 to 1900. What about the U.S.? The U.S. industrializes. Our first textile mill, which is stolen from Britain, from British plants, goes into Providence, Rhode Island, about 1875, just about the time of the Revolution. But Waltham doesn't happen until 1810 or so, 1815, I think. So that's when things really take off, is after about 1815, after the War of 1812 and so on. But the U.S. starts to innovate very quickly. The American system, the first system of standardized parts, machining of parts, is invented in New England. And New England becomes the center of American industry, soon to be joined by the Mid-Atlantic, that is New York, northern New Jersey, Philadelphia, a bit of Baltimore. So there's the industrial belt in the United States. What's the date on that one? 18-something. Looks like 1850, but what is it? 1856. Okay, so right before the Civil War. That's where industry is located, with a few exceptions. It's not yet very big in the upper Midwest. After the Civil War, industrialization continues to take off at an unbelievable rate, and particularly out here in the Midwest, with above all, Chicago, but places like Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Dayton, and Detroit. And by the early 20th century, of course, Detroit will become the car industry center. So the U.S. also passes Britain about 1900, and after that, it's had neck and neck with Germany for a while, old Germany. Of course, one of Hitler's great miscalculations is he thought Germany could outproduce the U.S., and that turned out to be absolutely false. The U.S. economy by World War II was much bigger than Germany, even with all the stimulus of German militarization. And the center of the U.S., when the U.S. is the industrial power of the world in the 20th century, the center is not in New England. It's not even in the Mid-Atlantic. It's in the Midwest. It's Chicago, Detroit, Toledo, and all the rest of the cities out there, Saginaw and Flint, and so on, many of which are in ruins now. Okay, the rest of North America, the Caribbean, which had been the center of that European slave sugar thing, that goes down. And industry, as industry takes over as the motor of the modern economy, the old trading slave empire goes down. Now, of course, there's a battle against slavery, English and slavery. We have the Civil War, there's the Haitian Revolution, and so on. So, but that goes on. I mean, a lot of the sugar economy in the Caribbean is still pretty strong up through maybe the 1870s, maybe even a little longer. And Cuba's still a major producer of sugar, don't get me wrong, but this is no longer the motor of North American economy the way it had been before. Canada, it industrializes a bit. I show here the Labatt Brewery, which I think is in Toronto, isn't it? Or is it in Montreal? Toronto, yeah. For you, huh? Well, yeah. It might be in Hamilton for all I know. But anyway, so Canada also, but very closely knit with U.S. industry across the border. And Mexico also starts to industrialize for the first time under the Porfiriato in the last quarter of the 19th century. And it's helped a great deal. The reason I put this map of railroads up is the railroads start to go into Mexico, starts to be U.S. investment going in, mostly for mining and agriculture. But there does start to be some industrialization in Mexico City and in Monterrey, which ends up the major industrial center of Mexico for many decades after that. And then last but not least, the Eastern Front. I don't want to forget Japan, the Meiji Revolution, Restoration, whatever you want to call it. It's really a social revolution, a political revolution, a coup d'etat in 1868 with the express purpose of catching up to the West. Once the West sends in ships and they open up, they defeat China, and then Japan sees the writing on the wall. And then we have the Americans claiming the glorious opening of Japan in 1850, whatever it was, 1 or 3, Matthew Perry and all that, Commodore Perry, which by the way sailed out of San Francisco. But and the Japanese see that these guys have got these huge ships, these huge guns, and samurai swords, contrary to Hong Kong movies and such like, and Kill Bill and so on, is not going to defeat these guys. But if you want to play the game, you better get what they've got, and that means getting industry. And so they systematically start to promote modern industry, sending students abroad to learn what the West is doing, and so on and so on. So brilliantly that by 1904, 1905, they go to war. Well, first they take Taiwan, they defeat Korea, then they take part of Manchuria, and defeat China. Already by 1895, I think. And by 1905, they actually defeat Russia. Now, Russia is regarded by the Europeans as pretty much European. So that's a stunning blow. And by the way, that's when the term the Yellow Peril appears, is when Japan defeats Russia. And the Kaiser Wilhelm II starts calling it the Yellow Peril. Why is it the Yellow Peril? It's not just simply by race. It's about industrial power and military force. And Japanese become players. They enter the great game of imperialism, but in Asia. And there's a whole lot of leftovers from that to this day, although it's pretty much disappearing. And you can see Japanese growth taking off here. One problem with these kind of graphs is what's down here looks really small, but compared to what it was here, it's pretty high by then, by 1890. But then look in the early 20th century, it's really taking off, and it's growing about as fast as the U.S. So this is GDP per capita. So no wonder the Japanese thought they could duke it out with the U.S. Again, a very bad miscalculation, just in industrial terms, quite apart from generals and heroes. Russia also starts to industrialize in the late 19th century. I'm not so good on this one, I'm a little vague about it, but they do end feudal agriculture in the 1860s under serfdom. But it still is Tsar state out in the these grand estates and the Tsar's government right up until the revolution. But boy, does Russia start to undergo huge, tumultuous upheavals when it starts to industrialize. And of course, even as early as 1906, with the defeat by Japan, you get the first upheaval of the Russian Revolution. It doesn't all happen starting in 1917. It's been perking because you start to have a working class, you start to have change in the countryside, you start to have modernizations and so on, and ideas traveling around Europe about socialism and revolution that go along with this whole process. And then when Russia gets defeated, essentially it comes apart under the blows of the German army in World War I. That gives the opening for revolution. And the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 starts a new phase of industrialization in Russia. That during the 20s, they start to experiment with industry. They want industry for military purposes. They want it for food purposes. And Lenin becomes this big admirer, ironically, of Henry Ford and the assembly line. But Lenin dies very early in the revolution. It kind of goes through the 20s. It's a very wide open thing. But by the end of the 20s, Stalin takes over. And after that, it's a horrendous dictatorship. And that's when you get the absolute central planning. That actually doesn't exist in the 20s. Yeah. So you get central planning, kind of forced industrialization. But it works. And it works so well that by World War II, Russia is in a position to actually fight Germany and not come apart. And actually trade blows. And eventually, it's Russia that defeats Germany. In case you thought it was us. It was actually Russia. They're the ones who lose all the people. They're the ones who swallow up the Wehrmacht. They're the ones who get to Berlin first. So whatever else you may think of them, they did industrialize and they were quite powerful. And no wonder after World War II, a lot of parts of the world looked at the Russian model as being perhaps better than the capitalist model. So what it does prove is you don't have to have capitalism to industrialize. That's another important point. You don't have to have the market to industrialize. Now, there's a lot of ways, and because this course we're not really talking about the old Soviet system at all, there are ways in which it was inefficient industrialization. It kind of ran out of steam at a certain point. It was really good at producing missiles and really lousy at producing toasters, and so on. So, it's a mixed bag, but don't think it didn't do anything. And then the post-war era, come around to that. Three parts, back to the American century, of course, and from the ashes, three peripheries. So industrialization has a big setback. The world wars, especially World War II, with aerial bombing, just annihilates, hundreds of factories, railroad lines and bridges and cities. Whole cities are just incinerated, particularly in Germany. But a lot of British cities suffer a lot from the Blitz and so on. So again, industrial bombardment, industrial planes. One reason, I'm not going on about this, but for instance, one of the reasons the United States could produce so many planes was big dams, hydroelectric power in the Northwest allowed us to produce, and also in the South with Muscle Shoals, allowed us to produce immense amounts of cheap aluminum, which went into fuselages. So Bonneville Dam helps win the war. That's what industrialization will do for you. Okay, but at the end of the war, Japan and Europe are pretty leveled, and a lot of their industrial base is just wiped out, and it's really annihilated. So U.S. comes out of the war with 60% or more of the world's industrial capacity. I mean, that's just unbelievable. No wonder we're the kings of the roost. No wonder we could give the Marshall Plan and so on. I mean, we just dominate the world, the industrial world, the trading world, everything. And as I told you, trade collapsed and starts to inch up as U.S. actually starts to export, especially to Europe. And we not only have the most, we also have the most advanced assembly system because of Fordism. We have the biggest, most modern business system because of the modern corporation, and so on. And New York becomes the capital of capital, as I said before. So U.S. has really got everything. It's got an incredibly capable, educated, and more educated workforce. Things are really looking great for the U.S. after the war. What happens in the losers? Well, you get these two miracles, so-called, as they were called at the time, the German miracle and the Japanese miracle. And the German miracle is, as they come back, as I call from the ashes, look at these rates of economic growth. There's 10% there. These are like China today. Look at those rates in the 50s in Germany. They're just phenomenally high. No wonder people talk about the German miracle. Now, it took about 5 years after the war. There was occupation. There was so much devastation, just getting people back on their feet, getting some food systems, rebuilding a few roads and railroads. And it takes a little while before this is going to take off. By 1950, boom, it's explosive. But look how it went down through the rest of the century. It's hard to keep up those kind of rates of growth. When you're starting from a low base and putting a lot of new stuff in place, you can grow really fast. And we'll see this in country after country. It's very hard to sustain these kind of growth rates. I was just reading a thing yesterday about China. This economist who teaches at Beijing University, very good, worth reading, Michael Pettis. And he's saying, look, by 2015, 2020, and certainly Chinese growth rates will be down to 3%. That'll be normal. Will you watch? It's got to go down. You can't keep that up. That's catch-up growth rates. That's that burst at the beginning. And it's partly a statistical phenomenon starting from a small base, and partly playing catch-up. And then it gets harder. Now we'll come back to this to see what happens to the old guys who have got these kind of growth rates. Okay, so why could Germany redevelop so fast? It had a big industrial legacy. And so they had a huge labor surplus of skilled workers, and they put them back to work, got some capital with the help of the U.S., built those factories, and off they go. And the U.S. invests, private and public, pumps a lot of money in with the Marshall Plan. Everybody talks about the Marshall Plan. But we have this huge army stationed in Germany with NATO that's pumping tons of money into the German economy at the bottom. And Germany grows by selling mostly to Europe. And then it starts to export a bit to the U.S. Volkswagens arrive in the 1960s. Those little bugs become popular. And then the Japanese cars arrive in the 70s. And then the Korean cars arrive in the 90s. Get kind of a pattern there? So Japanese miracle, a little later, it's a little more delayed because of the Korean War, the occupation, then the Korean War. So it takes a while for Japan to get back on its feet. But once it does, by the early 60s, here you go with these even faster growth rates, over 10%, just like China today, which is going to, by this time, by 1980 or whenever it is, Japan's going to be the second largest economy in the world. So this, you may think Japan looks little on the map, but it's incredibly important industrially in today's world. But again, notice how it goes down. And by the 90s, Japan's having a hell of a time. 2000s, just not looking good. Germany's done much better recently than Japan. Again, industrial revival based on rebuilding with a lot of experimentation. The Japanese are very good at this. One of the reasons they're going to overtake both us and the Chinese is because of their experimentations with new methods of mass production, which I will talk about, I hope, in another lecture. Yes, I got that in another. Also a big labor surplus, but when the unions and the communist parties get strong under the occupation in the late 40s, the U.S. occupation under MacArthur suppresses them along with the Japanese government. Boom. So now you've got company unions, and you've had company unions ever since. The Cold War and military spending are really important to Japan and East Asia, not to be forgotten again. And we'll come back to this when I talk about empire, because military spending plays a huge role, and military strategy and Cold War strategy plays a big role in the revival of these areas. So we can't just talk about this as Toyotaism. It's also about politics and imperialism and so on. So keys to the miracles, coming up from the ruins, rebuild your capacity. You already have incredible knowledge and skills embedded in your workers, managers, technicians, engineers, and so on. And you've got immense surplus labor in a condition of devastation. People are poor, wages are really low, but the workers are really good. And that gives you this huge kind of cost advantage in labor, which you're going to see later again in places like Korea and Taiwan and China today and Vietnam today and so on. What's more is they adopt the best of U.S. technology, adapt it, twist it, turn it, and make it even better. So all other things being equal, when they rebuild, they've got the newest factories in the world. which already gives you leadership. And when the United States has deindustrialization and starts hitting the U.S. in the early 80s, the recession of the 80s, you see these steel mills closing down that had been built in 1910 or 1890s, and we're still using really old furnaces, whereas the Germans and the Japanese and the Brazilians were all using these cold rolling techniques that the Americans didn't even have. You know, you had to leap right over the guys who were already in the lead because you were behind. There's also a very important question of social renewal. Because of the defeats, because of the occupations, these countries cleared out. The old Prussian landed aristocrats, they're gone. They're off in East Germany. Well, actually, they're either dead or in jail, in Soviet jails. Even in West Germany, political reform, a whole new kind of federalist government in Germany. Japan, they clear out, they make the emperor a figurehead. They clear out. A lot of the old industrial combines and industrial leaders get tried, get put in jail, occasionally hung. And so that really clears the decks. So that, for instance, the guy who invents, this guy Ono, who invents the Toyota just-in-time system that we'll talk about more, in the 1950s, is a little Joe engineer who, under previous circumstances, nobody probably would listen to. But he actually was listened to because a lot of the old dead wood at the top had been cleared out. Makes you think about the U.S. today, by the way, about the accumulation of dead wood or the Giants. For you baseball fans, any baseball fans here? You're the only one? A's fans? Oh my God, what a bunch of nerdy intellectuals. Cal football fans? All right. Okay, soccer fans. Okay, all right. Oh my God. Well, yeah, the Giants have a lot of dead wood. That happens. It happens. You have success. You guys get contracts, somebody got a lot of dead wood. And then you go, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then there's a big argument. Let the younger guys in. Well, that's what happened in Japan and Germany. A lot of younger guys got in. And you should think about that because when you're kids in America, your chances of being in power before you're 50, 60, let alone 50, are very small. That's why everybody goes into high tech from Berkeley, because that's one of the few areas you can become rich and famous and important and innovate while you're still young. But not in Detroit. Okay, so you get the big three. U.S., Germany, Japan, 1950, 60% of world output, almost all in the U.S. 1994, 66% of world output. I mean, talk about a world dominated by the global north in industrial terms. And they're 1, 2, 3, except for the Soviet Union, which then collapses. And China only becomes number 2, I think passes, well, it only passed Germany about early 2000s, and it just passed Japan, I think, last year. Does that sound right? Not last year, 2 years ago. And that's a staggering Japan. So Japan was all much bigger. We tend to think of China because it's so big, population size. We tend to think, oh, it must be number 1 in industry. But no, U.S. is still way ahead. But it's really come up fast. Okay, 3 peripheries. In the wake of the big 3, you see 3 peripheries, Latin America, Western Europe, Northeast Asia. Okay, so Latin America actually after World War II grows pretty rapidly. Pretty good growth rate, 3, 4, 5%. Brazil and Mexico, of course, by far the biggest. Argentina, which had been richer, doesn't really do that well. Chile starts to come on well, and so on. So pretty good growth, mostly based on the internal market, or what, if you take in development economics, you know, it's called import substitution. But basically means going your own way, using the domestic market rather than exports and imports. And when we get to the neoliberal era, of course, the mantra becomes exports, imports, and so on. And it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. ISI works for a while. It's another one of these things where, you know, economists will tell you why it shouldn't work. But in fact, for a quarter century, it worked quite well. And these countries grew. But then they kind of ran out of steam. And that's when they turned, like in the case of Mexico with Salinas, to neoliberalism, opening up markets, privatization, and so on. In Western Europe, France quickly modernizes and industrializes at a level it had never done before World War II. That's why you'll see that French intellectuals are all very taken by this. And you get this whole theories of modernity coming out of France. Because it hits very suddenly in France, a new wave, and takes off with modern kinds of mass production factories. Italy then develops. And of course, France develops by the 1970s, late 70s develops the TGV, the very fast trains, which we in California still, not only can we not build them, we can't even get the rails laid, right? But now everybody's talking about this like, whoa, that's the future. No, my friends, it's the past. We missed that boat a long time ago. Speaking of boats sailing, remember? Okay. Italy. By northern Italy in the 60s, 50s, and 60s with Fiat, you know, it's really going. And then in the 70s and into the 80s, the middle Italy, that is the central part of Italy, Tuscany, Emilia Romagna, they taking off. Everybody's going, wow, look what they're doing there. Spain starts to get a lot of German factories coming in the 1980s and 90s. It takes off, become a modernized economy. Of course, now it's collapsed because of the real estate bubble, and so on. So the rest of Western Europe really developed pretty rapidly. Not Greece, not Portugal. Portugal, they don't get much in the way of industry to this day. Taiwan, over in Northeast, what a lot of people call Northeast Asia, is Korea, basically means Korea and Taiwan, along with Japan. Okay, so Japan's growing. Japan helps propel through its demand for machinery and stuff. It helps propel growth in Korea, especially, and also Taiwan, and so on. So you get these kind of growth rates. This is Taiwan's growth rate, 10, 12% through the 50s. I mean, it's actually growing pretty early, but it's still really small. But by the 70s, people are really noticing Taiwan. And look at the increase. This is 60s, 64 to 94 growth of per capita income. Taiwan has a lot of heavy industry. It also has a lot of small industry. Kind of an interesting balance. It will then go on to become very important in the foreign capital in China, in mainland China. Korea takes off after about 1975. These huge companies, these big chaebol companies that are still around, Samsung, a lot of them, a couple have disappeared. And becomes, you know, the world's greatest producer of oil tankers, incredible steel mills. The steel mill in Pittsburgh, California, is a joint venture, basically Korean machinery, Korean technology. Look at the Hyundai and the Kia, which were a joke 20 years ago, and are now regularly seen all over American California highways especially, and so on and so on and so on. So we always talk about China, but huge amounts of important stuff being produced and shipped out of Korea. And of course, Samsung is now challenged. You know, it has an iPad, and it's battling with. There was just an article in today's paper about doing battle with Apple iPad in Europe. You know, kind of doing an end run around the U.S. market, and so on.